Hello students, welcome to the online NPTEL course Contemporary Architecture and Design. This is the last lecture of this course. So in the previous lectures we discussed the modernism and postmodernism, and in the postmodernism we discussed how postmodernism were there in the architecture, different phases of architectural movements, and also in the last class we have discussed about the postmodern influence in the typography, and also we have we talked about the modernist and postmodernist movements in typography, and also we have discussed about the design movement in postmodernism like Memphis, Milano, and we have also talked about the art movement in the postmodern era like pop art and related movements. So we will in the last class we will see a few of the industrial designers and the furniture designers work in postmodern movement. So in the time frame, if we look at the postmodern movement can be broadly can be classified into different sub movements, which in many cases we say that this is a isolated movement like deconstructivism, critical regionalism and other movements. So a few of the industrial designers and architects also worked in the furniture design and other design postmodern design movement. So their works falls under historicism, critical regionalism, even pop which is related to pop art, which is like Memphis, Milano, and deconstructive architecture style. So we have also discussed few of the designs which has been done in deconstructive architectural style and also worked designed by architects, for example Gary's cube and Zaha Hadid's work in different industrial design. So she designed furnitures as well as also she have designed yacht, and Gary have also designed many design which is under deconstructivism. We will mainly discuss about the other designers work which falls under another postmodern style. So in the design features it's same as the architectural style, it's 1980s onwards, and the movement against purity, simplicity and minimalist approach of modernism, and complexity of the shape and form, color and texture is also there in the industrial design and the furniture design. Contextual correlation is there, and then imbibing the past history was there, and then place sensitive and the contextual sensitivity and the user specific need was there, which is opposing the internationalism. The meta design and inductive design process and the co-design process were there, and which we have discussed in the which started in the modern phases, and George Nelson's work, the storage wall and all those things which started in the late modernist movement and continued in the postmodern era, which we have discussed earlier, and his office cubicles and everything which was correlated with the metabolism movement, where the metabolism is a late modern movement which later in the postmodernism continued. As we see, the postmodernist as well as the modernist approach of design and product design and interior design continued simultaneously in today's time. So those movements of meta design and the modularity is also characteristics of postmodern design, which we are not discussing because we have already discussed with George Nelson's design style, which he started. He was the pioneer of that in the industrial design. So we will discuss some of the designers work which is closer to the critical regionalism, and the contextual connection is there in the movement. So one of the furniture designer is Kenneth Copenpack. He's from Philippines. So if we look at, so this is a postmodern today's world. He is active in design, and he's one of the famous designer from Philippines. So if you look at the design, so he uses the local material which is bamboo and cane, and connects the regional style into the contemporary design. But if you look at the overall form, which is very contemporary, so this kind of curvilinear form which has a fluidity in the design is translated with the local material. So you can see the total form is very contemporary, and all these curves are going into a different direction, and this has a curvilinear shape, but together this gives a very regional connect. So, regional influence, traditional material was explored, contextual design against the internationalist approach, and contemporary exploration of the vernacular regionalism was there. So, this we can say this is a contemporary vernacular style which he is imbibing and fusing the local material and the local style into the contemporary expression of that. So, if we look at this bed designed by Kenneth Copenhagen, is you can see a clear influence from the Far Eastern architectural style, traditional Far Eastern architecture style into his design, into product design. So, you can see this kind of pagoda's curvature is translated into the bed. The shade over the top of the bed has a illusion of this pagoda's curvature, and also similar color is followed, but though it is made out of cane, and this construction material and everything is quite different in the very different in the architecture, but similar color is there, and the texture and the material is also the local material, which is cane and wood. And if you look at this is a typical gate of the Far Eastern architectural style. Japan, Philippines and China has this kind of gate, and also you can see this has a the top part of the gate is quite similar in the bed design as well. And also if you look at these two posts are also quite similar in the shape of the post, and which tapers on the top. And the furnitures and the lanterns, which are also quite interesting, and it also fuses with the traditional style of lantern in the Far Eastern style, and which goes together, which goes and with the bed design. And you can see regionalistic approach, which was translated into a very contemporary bed design. Is another design is this. So this is a sofa set. So this is one seater and then a 3-seater sofa, which combines together. And if you look at the height of the sofa, it is quite low, and to follow the Zen principle of the Buddhist Zen principle. And also you can see the similar lantern is taken from this inspiration, but translated into a contemporary style. So you can see a very just a jali or sieve kind of thing, but the same form is there, but within there's a very contemporary lamp, and which blends with the furniture. Now if we look at this style, which is the main feature of this design, is also inspired by the partition wall, wood and glass or paper partition wall, which is a Japanese or the Far Eastern style. This is a predominantly the traditional style of Japanese garden partition walls, and then you can see this kind of partition wall is Japanese garden, and in other countries in the other Far Eastern countries. So this has been a clear inspiration from this sofa set. So this sofa set, this backrest does not become just a backrest, it gives a sense of enclosure, and this acts as a partition wall, which he have taken inspiration from this traditional Japanese and Far Eastern wall. So his another example is this cane furniture. So he have left the canes untied, and it gives a sensation of a normal natural setting of a cane, the way cane grows. So those kind of lines were kept, and this was weaved till this part, and then it was not weaved, so it gives a natural texture of the cane. And the other forms of this cane and bamboo furnitures are given a very contemporary shapes, and you can look at the other designs of Kenneth Copenhagen, and you can see the how he plays with the contemporary form with the traditional material. On here also you can see a very contemporary woogie form is curvilinear Mobius strip kind of form was explored. His another design has a similar kind of thing, where two part of the sofa was going like this in the front part, and this is the back part of the sofa, which goes like this, and this is the seating, and here all these cane lines will be here, and you can also see a cane lines over here. So it's like a Mobius strip which is fused, two Mobius strip fused together. a very contemporary curvilinear form, which also can you can see a similarity with the Zaha Hadid's curvilinear forms he's exploring. And then the very contemporary very regionalistic material is used, like cane and bamboo. And here also you can see his work, he also uses the woodwork, but it also gives a very traditional look of and you can relate everything with the Far Eastern style of design. Now, there are a few other examples which also can be taken from the other architectural styles and other regionalistic approach. For example, this gives a very Middle Eastern look, and then this kind of doors and all these ornamentations gives a very Saracenic look into the design, and all these partition walls and the bed design and these shades and the drapery gives a very Saracenic look into the design. And then here you can see a very Indian style into the design of the interior, and all this earth colors, and then the bed rest and the way bed is designed, which is joined together with the floor, is also has a very Indianness into the design. And also you might have seen all this kind of stools which is stuffed cushions inside. This has a Rajasthani patchwork, and here this is a Bengal owl which was translated into the chair, is also quite famous in the in Bengal, which is a translation of traditional owl, wood carved owl of Bengal into the contemporary furniture. Now, another Indian architect and designer, Sandeep Sangharu, also works in the similar lines. So you can see the bamboo work, how the bamboo's heat joint is bent into the, this is a wall cabinet, so it will be fixed with the wall. And then the similar concept was done with the chairs as well. And this is a storage spaces, so you can see how contemporary lines and then this kind of quite deconstructive lines are translated into the very indigenous material, which is bamboo. And also the chairs and other furniture design, if you look at, has a similar blend of contemporary vernacular style, which connects with the critical regionalism, the thought of architecture. Now, other architects and designers has also worked on the similar line, like the furniture designers Patricia. So here also you can see a critical regionalist approach, the traditional material, the way the traditional the connect with the tradition with the contemporary. And here the chandelier and total setup has a connect with the context, and the partition walls and everything has a connection. Now it can also connect with the historic approach of the design, so which is connected again quite correlated with the Historicism movement of architecture. So we have seen the Historicism movement in various architectural examples, like the Swan Resort and the Dolphin Resort by Michael Graves, and Philip Johnson's house, and in his later phases, and Robert Venturi's work in the Vanna Venturi house. And also it can come into the furniture design or industrial design style. So we have seen talked about the Memphis Milano group, and especially Alessandro Mendini's works. This is Proust chair, which connects the historic style of chair, which is very classical in the form, but when he is using the drapery and also the coloring the material, it has a very postmodern approach, and this is not showing the material's own property, the material's own color and texture, but there's a different texture which is throughout in the drapery and as well as the structural member of this chair. So and also if we look at the color, it is very vibrant, and then different colored dots are there, which is very contemporary or quite related to the pop movement. And so this has a historic connect, and also the postmodern approach of dealing with the history. And here also if you look at, so this has a this is definitely not a historic setup, but it is inspired from the history. And all the furnitures are designed in a contemporary style, but the overall appearance of the design has a blend with the history with the contemporary style, which is connected to the historicism and the pop style of dealing redefining the history into the interior spaces. So here also you can look at the color scheme is very pop, like the blue and the purple, or pinkish purple is coming together, which is not a classical style of coloring. So that is a very pop style. And even if you look at, so there's a eclectic mixture of different styles. So this is very modern, but this goes with the color style. And then this this candle holders and this chandeliers are inspired, and the false ceiling is inspired from the history, and then it's blended with the pop style. So here with the paintings, and which is used as a cushion cover with the another style of painting which is very pop is combined. And then everything in the pattern in the floor is quite eclectic, but has a mixture of history with the pop style, which is connected with the historicism and as well as the pop. And here also this is a very traditional looking furniture, but bended and twisted with a very deconstructive style of design. This is here also we know that more than functionalism, it's the sculptural qualities are sometimes more predominant in the postmodern style. So this is what is happening here. So this is working more as a sculpture than its functional value, and it also has a connect with the historic style. So this is can be connected with the historicism as well as the pop style of design, and this kind of furniture design can be connected with the both the styles. Now, metaphor in the design is one of the key features of postmodernism. So there will be a lot of metaphors added into the meaning added into the design, which we have seen in the architecture. For example, Mario Botta's work, where he is using the skylights as a metaphor of the coniferous trees, which we have seen in his design. And then Tadawando is using the charge of water, the water as a metaphor. And then even in the historicism, the Piazza d'Italia, Robert Venturi's work, architect Moore is using the different metaphors into the Piazza d'Italia. That is also there in the architecture. And here in design also we see a metaphor into the design. So Philip Stark is one of the famous architect as well as the designer in the postmodern era. So if you look at this table lamp, so this table lamp has a different height, and the main stack is like a gun. So you shoot the gun and then it will be illuminated. So this gives a metaphor of a gun. So the way gun fires, and then the light will be illuminated in that one. So it's not directly connected event. So he's connecting the event of shooting and with the switching on the light. So these two completely different event is connected with the metaphorical expression of borrowing the metaphor from a different event into the design, which is a very postmodern approach. And the design evolved into that style. And here also you can see this has a postmodern style of design, and all the colors, and then the single sofas and double sofa as well as the swings are designed. These lines and the patterns and everything has a postmodern style of design, and all this strips which is going. This is a postmodern way of design. This does not have a clear metaphor into that, but this one has, and clearly this one has. So if I show you just this product, it is quite difficult to understand what is the function of the product. So it's a Philip Stark's juicer which got a Red Dot Award. So the juicer looks like a spider, and then if you squeeze the juice, and it gives you the juice like this. So it has a metaphor of a spider, and then connected with the juicer. So apparently spider and juicer does not have any connect, but he has playfully connected the shape of a spider into the juicer. So also if you remember the Salvador Dali's Boca sofa, which looks like a lip, and which is colored in red, also has a metaphorical expression, which is a very surreal way of looking at it. So that's also a metaphor. Their metaphors are combined in industrial design. Now these are other examples of Philip Stark's design. So eclecticism is again another approach of postmodern design, which we have discussed in the architecture. So eclectic mixture of different styles and borrowing inspiration from different field is there in postmodern style, so which we have seen in Piazza d'Italia and many other examples of architecture, where different examples were taken and combined there. And also in the neo-modern style, there are two different style was added, so there's duality in the design was there. So Richard Mayer's work and John Hedgeduck wall house and everything has a two different approach of design. So one side in the John Hedgeduck's wall house was very curvilinear, and also it was connected with the modernist, the high modern, which is internationalist movement. So two opposite thing was blended together. Even in the Richard Mayer's work, one side was curvilinear, one side was rectilinear. So all these works were there. It was mixed together through the eclectic expression. So now these are some interior design by Philip Stark. So if you look at the Philip Stark's work, so here you can see this is a very classical way of designing a chair. So it's definitely not classical, but inspiration, you can see inspiration of classical inspiration is taken into the contemporary way of designing the chair. So this is a Philip Stark's chair, and then there's a very modern lamp, and then there's a sofa which blends the classical style of drapery with the contemporary style, and then a pure geometric thing, and then there's a mixture of many furniture, and then together this is again a very classical, inspired from a classical style. The chandelier is inspired from it, and two chandeliers are there, and then the painting and everything together creates a very eclectic mixture, but there is a holistic combination into that, so which is getting connected by the color. So if you look at, he's not changing the color in, he's not putting the eclecticism into the color, so he's putting the eclecticism into the shape and form of the furniture. So together it is becoming holistic. So if you look at, so is only one accentuation color, which is yellow. So yellow is here in the drapery as well as in the painting slip. So if you replace the color of the painting slip with some other color, the painting might not go with the whole setup. Also this yellow is there in the rug, and other colors are black and neutral colors. So that's how it's and also you can see the little yellow part in the chandelier as well. So everything together is getting combined and unified by the color itself, but all the other materials are quite different from each other. So the similar thing is doing in the this part as well. So there's a blue, also there's a little hint of blue here, and then yellow and blue is the predominant thing. So here in the chandelier it's very exaggerated, and then all this part with the water body is very deconstructive in the style. And again here in the mirror also has a historic depiction, but this fenestration is totally very modern and or the postmodern, you can say, this kind of style. But here also some features are very classical, inspired from the classical style, and then blended together. The other designs also has a similar kind of approach. So this is the same chair which you're seeing here, and also in the counter a lot of different colors and then mixture of different style is there, but there's a holistic unified style which is there in his design. So so we end the lecture and the total module here. So we have holistically have designed the three different paradigm, which is architecture, a little bit of art, and industrial design. And we have covered the from the industrial revolution, post-industrial revolution, the pre-modern movements for the machine against the machine movements, and the related architecture and design movement. Then we went to the modernist movements, and we mainly focused on the architecture, as well as we have also talked about the industrial design and the art movements. And then we went to the, after 1980s, we went to the postmodern movement, and mainly we discussed different postmodern architectural movement as well as a few art movements and design movements. And we also talked about how typography was parallelly changing in the contemporary era. Thank you.